This program is a paid commercial announcement and in no way represents the views of WPHT or its management.
Now on Talk Radio 1210, WPHT, WPHT HD, WOGL HD3 Philadelphia. Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor.
If we don't move in our own direction, we're going to become extinct. In fact, in some cases, we're close to being extinct right now.
Presented by Weinerman Pain and Wellness. Serious doctors for serious injuries. And powered by the law offices of Pond, Lehocky, Stern, Giordano. Talk, listen, and speak to the region's most influential leaders. It's Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor.
Radio 1210. WPHT, good evening, everybody, and welcome into the big show here on a Saturday night. It's our official start of the fall of 2017. J-Doc, and I have to say, Maddie, get that drum roll. Maddie queued up a big, bold drum roll tonight, J-Doc. I have to confess. Get it, Maddie, give me that. You have delivered tonight as we come out of the fall and we live and we get ready to set our table. You have delivered tonight.
Yeah, so it's my pleasure, my absolute pleasure to thank the Henry James Saloon in Roxborough on Jamestown Street, right off of Henry Avenue, for the unbelievable food. In honor of the Congressman I knew was coming in, and of course Bill Ross. Certainly, we spared no expense. Unbelievable. So
I know that. I got the text.
So let me just give you an idea of what we had. So we got one of everything. We got an Italian club. We got hot roast beef sandwich, which I ate half. It was amazing. Meatball parm, chicken cordon bleu. I had one of those babies. And a Thanksgiving sandwich. A Guido pork. Now, I didn't make that name up. That name is right there. You're reading it right there, Bill Ross. Unbelievable. I want to give a little shout out to Dave Falcione, the proprietor. Unbelievable guy. Just a great place to be. Rob Petit, Joe Mangano. And, of course, I want to thank Judy Busfield. She was the waitress that took care of us. Did an unbelievable job. That's the Henry James Saloon in Roxborough. Unbelievable. You saw, Joe, I ate those babies in record time. But wait a minute. Let me just say one thing. And we ate half of one and half of the other. I didn't eat all 8 sandwiches. Saved them for you guys. I think Bill Ross ate 4 himself.
Bill Ross sampling the Guido sandwich. But what a great way to kick off the fall of 2017. Special thanks again to the Henry James Saloon in Roxborough. Coming up at 8 o'clock, the Dan Loney Show. We'll get an update from Dan on his sandwich.
Dan looks happy right now.
He's got a thumbs up, so he's happy. That means from 8 to 11 tonight, Dan's going to be
He's not going to be cranky tonight. He's going to be
here on Talk Radio 1210, WPHT. Maddie, nice job on the drum roll. Well done. Let's get everybody into the conversation now and set our table for what's going to be a very, very big show. As J-Doc referenced when we first came on during our food segment, we're proud to welcome into the studio live with us tonight U.S. Congressman Donald Norcross, who is joining us here in the 1210 studios tonight. Welcome in, Congressman. Thanks for coming across the water.
It's good to be here, and I'm looking out the window and I can see my city of Camden and actually the waterfront, which is exploding with construction right now. Good for jobs and good for South Jersey.
Well, good to have you in here, and we're going to spend the next hour with Congressman Donald Norcross, who's in the studio with us live tonight. So a real treat to have the Congressman with us. Billy Ross. Bill Ross is back with us live from the Newspaper Guild of Greater Philadelphia, one of our correspondents here on Saturday Night Live. Bill, welcome in, man. Welcome to the fall of 2017. Good to be here, and nice to start it off with you as well.
Thanks, Joe. Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's a real pleasure.
It's great to have Billy. Brings the big dogs on him, doesn't he? Bill Ross is here. We got a U.S. Congressman in the house. So there you go, Bill. You're going to be on next week, then the week after that. And
thank you.
There you go.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure, and I'm glad to be here with the Congressman. He's a very good friend. Thank you.
All right, good stuff, Billy Ross. Thank you very much for being here in the studio.
So we're going to start off on a little bit of a somber note. Prayers going out for the tragic loss of a member of Labor's Local 57, Ryan Boyer, who is the business manager of the Labor's District Council. Announced that on the on Facebook, and when it happened, and of course it was in the news. And so thoughts and prayers to the individual's family, and certainly all the members of Labor's Union. Unbelievable loss, and so just tragic.
Yeah, no, tragic loss, and a tragic reminder of how challenging the work is done, and Congressman, when you reference all of the work being done on the waterfront, or you look outside in Center City and you see all the buildings, and I think people take for granted the skill and everything that is required to be able to build, execute, and ultimately create what is a finished product. And when you get a reminder today, no doubt about how close to perfection you must be.
Well, having been an electrician, and as I used to tell my kids, I'm an electrician with a tie now, serving in Congress. But 3 times in my career out in the field, we lost somebody on the job. And it is just so devastating for those in the family who lose someone, but his coworkers, to lose somebody, to go to work in the morning and not come home.
Right.
And I remember late one night, we were working on Garden State Park, and we lost a sheet metal worker. And his daughter drove in about 10 o'clock to pick up his car and just brought everything home of how devastating this is and how dangerous the work is. So you have to be on your toes all the time and make sure that you're watching. If not,
anything can happen, and so we do once a year with PhillyLabor. Barbara Rocky does an amazing job, and Jim Moran and the whole crew there, the Workers' Memorial. And with the Workers' Memorial, we obviously what's the saying? We celebrate the dead and fight like hell for the living. And unbelievably, so at the end, after the ceremony, there's like a luncheon. We walk up Delaware Avenue, and each one of the attendees gets to hold a placard of somebody who lost their life, who went, like you just said, Congressman, who went to work and didn't come home. The amazing thing was being an iron worker, so there was, I don't know how many individuals, but I held the iron worker. I got the placard for the iron worker who lost his life on the bridge. I forget it. I think his last name was Lewinkowski, and I really apologize for not having that. But and so that, how emotional was that? I saved it. So it was well put, Congressman.
The topic of conversation in the news as we move along into the weekend, of course, is the hurricane that is bearing in on Florida. Not lost in the conversation is the tragedy and everything in Houston as well. And of course, Congressman, I would love to begin the conversation with you and just have you be able to talk candidly about it. Hurricane or Superstorm Sandy affected the state of New Jersey in such a heavy and such a demonstrative way, and now we're dealing with Irma for Florida, and of course what happened down in Houston, which is tragic.
Well, we were seeing it play out right before our very eyes. We have the television set on here watching what's happening in Florida, but we saw what happened in Houston and in Texas. And the remarkable thing is, in Congress, we did the right thing.
Right.
Within a few days of it, we're already authorizing money for the relief effort. And we had this vote on Friday that took care of not only the hurricane that impacted Texas and Louisiana, but the one that's hitting today in Florida. And believe it or not, 90 members of Congress voted against this. 90 Republicans. Every Democrat understood the problem. Even though they voted against Sandy aid a couple years ago, those Texas Republicans voted against giving aid to New Jersey and New York. But yesterday, they voted against their own state getting emergency money.
It's unimaginable.
I don't get it. I don't understand it.
Can you tell me, give me a little, I couldn't fathom it. Can you give me a reason why someone would do that? I mean, I know you can't imagine it, but let's just take our wildest imaginations.
The debt limit is the condition that they're putting on it, that we had to raise the debt limit to pay our bills, just like you do in your family. You have to pay the bills. They didn't want to do that. And they put the monetary issues before human issues. Just remarkably, one of the most impactful moments I've had since I've been in Congress. Why would you do this? Hurt your own people.
Yeah, it's staggering, and the one thing that, and I want to point this out because it's just what I find amazing is that a hurricane, lives are lost. I mean, the tragedy is unbelievable, and it becomes, how does it become a political issue? One thing I want to point out.
Well, Donald Trump didn't make it a political issue, did he?
No, in fact, he did the opposite. When the heads of both the Senate and the House, both Republicans and Democrats, went to the White House, they immediately struck a deal, knowing the most important thing we can do now is support those. We are the United States of America. Storms just don't pick one area. And quite frankly, he did the right thing. We came together as a nation to provide it.
Absolutely, and I know that when Harvey hit, and you yourself made it clear that there would be no politics involved, and that you were voting for the relief effort, and in spite of the fact that when Sandy happened, and it's poignant because of course you're a congressman from the state of New Jersey, and so at the end of the day,
how do you
could have taken, but you could have, this could have been your payback time, and you chose not to go that route.
Yeah, obviously, initial reaction to somebody that hurts you, you want to make sure that they're treated equally.
An eye for an eye.
But the fact is, they're Americans who are hurting, and that's our job, is to make sure we're making it better for those who we represent. And quite frankly, they are the people we represent. They're in America.
You know what I think is amazing when as devastating, the hurricanes are, and it's a very difficult time in America. There's racial tensions, a lot of things going on. But when you see, so the talking heads they talk politics. But when you see those videos, and you see individuals that are stranded, black, white, who cares if they're Republicans or Democrats? The people helping the people going from one state down there, they're not asking questions when they see somebody stranded or lives in jeopardy, if they're a Republican or a Democrat, if they're black or they're white or they're Hispanic. They're helping one another. And that really is the genuine spirit of people. And so
I don't get it, J-Doc. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I don't understand how an individual, I always ask our listeners to close your eyes for a moment and imagine what was happening in front of you was happening to you. And I just don't get how 90 Republicans could vote against. I'm so glad that Donald Trump went against, I don't want to, the system, for lack of a better explanation, Bill, and decided to do it.
It's hard you just can't fathom it, like you said. It makes no sense. Whether the president did the right thing or not, apparently he did. But 90, that number is staggering, that 90 people, 90 Republicans can vote.
You have to remember there's a couple issues here. You hear about how government is the enemy. It's horrible. Right now, what I see government is at its best.
Right.
Rescuing its people, doing what it's supposed to do. And that's the part we have to remember. Government is by the people, for the people, and it's doing what it should do. We should all come together, just like we did on 9/11. Nobody asked if they were Democrats or Republican, blue or red. We came together as a nation, and that's what needs to be done.
And the amazing thing is, we like the Congressman said, we're watching. The TV's on in the studio, and so they're showing obviously what's going on in Florida right now. We saw what happened in Texas, and of course we experienced Sandy, and it's a scary thought. Just watching this, knowing that there are some people there that did not leave, that can't leave. Some people, I've spoken to a friend of mine whose daughter lives there, and she's not leaving, and friends are afraid of people looting and destroying their house, and they think that if they leave, no matter what happens to their house, it's going to get vandalized or robbed or whatever. The point is, that it's almost like the train, you're on the tracks and the train's coming either way. It's so scary to watch that and to know it's coming. God bless their souls.
Remember, it already hit Puerto Rico, which is part of our nation, and devastated the north coast of Puerto Rico. So it's
just seeing the governor earlier today saying to the people in Key Largo, I think, if you don't leave and you're not in a shelter, you will die. That was just amazing to see that.
I mean, that, and the thing is,
I can't imagine there's one person out there around the Delaware Valley listening into the broadcast tonight or listening at any time during the course of the last 72 hours that could actually provide for me one valid reason why the government wouldn't get involved and provide the help and the relief, and why 90 Republicans would vote against actually providing the aid. That is who we are. That is who this country is supposed to be, especially at times like this.
Could you imagine that happening after 9/11?
No, I couldn't.
We came together because it was the right thing to do.
Sure.
And somehow that division in this country is just remarkable.
I mean, listen, I'm a lifelong Democrat, and every time I watch George Bush throw that pitch from Yankee Stadium, from the mound, and it goes over, I get a tear in my eye. When I see George Bush, and of course I had a lot of differences with George Bush, but I can tell you this, when he gave that speech and he said the people that did this are going to hear us, man, I've never been prouder as an American. And so, like you said, Congressman, at the end of the day, during what unfortunately, and we hate these things that happen, but when they happen, it makes us, we come together stronger. And obviously, there's 90 people in this country that didn't get the memo.
Didn't get the message. Yes.
By the way, 4 Texas representatives voted against it. 4.
Yeah, I like to see them walk in the streets of Texas.
20
now.
of those voted against San Diego also, by the way.
Settle in on Talk Radio 1210 WPHT. It's Saturday Night Live as we continue to enjoy dinner tonight from the Henry James Saloon in Roxborough. We visit with Congressman Donald Norcross in the studio, Bill Ross in the studio, J-Doc, Krausey. We come back after the break. And welcome back to Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor on Talk Radio 1210 WPHT. U.S. Congressman Donald Norcross in the studio along with J-Doc and Bill Ross. Temple Owls got a big win over Villanova today. Last second field goal. They beat Nova 16-13. The Eagles get underway tomorrow against the Redskins, and we join you on a Saturday night with our kickoff show for the fall of 2017, J-Doc.
Absolutely. And so as we continue our conversation with Congressman Norcross, I'd like to point out something really interesting. So, Congressman, let's talk about your union background. You were a union electrician. You were a business agent in IBEW Local 351, the president of the South Jersey AFL-CIO. You have an extensive union background. In fact, and you were the first member of labor ever elected to Congress. Give me a little insight there.
Yeah, I'm honored to be the first business agent ever elected to Congress. It's remarkable. 211 attorneys, only 1 electrician, as I say. As I apologize to my daughter, who's an attorney, but it's who I am. I grew up in Pennsauken, right across the river. There was 4 boys. We're all a year apart. My 3 brothers went the more traditional route, went to college, but I love working with my hands. Mom gave me a bicycle for Christmas, and 20 minutes later, I'm tearing it apart, seeing how it works. So I joined with back then, the IBW 439 out of Camden, and did an apprenticeship program. As I like to tell people, I went to the other 4-year school. It was an apprenticeship. So worked my way up, an apprentice, a journeyman, a foreman, and then I was asked to join the office. I became a business agent, and then finally, right before I elected to Congress, I was the assistant business manager. So it's in my blood.
Well, the interesting thing is, politics is such a big part of labor. I mean, it really makes more sense than people that wouldn't understand that. Obviously, the transition. We union labor depends on our political standing. And if the one thing that's important, especially when you're a building tradesman like you were, we live and die with our political effectiveness.
Well, we're part of the community, as we used to say, is unless you're at the table, then you're on the menu. So we started something called Public Officials with a Union Label, asking rank and file members to start running for office. Be part of your community, and that just worked its way up, obviously. Steve Sweeney, who's Senate President. We had 6 people in the legislature when I left there.
Steve's an iron worker.
Steve is an iron worker.
$3.99. There you go. I know.
We
Steve
can't get him on this show, J-Doc, but he was an iron worker.
Well, yeah, he is, and we'll get Steve on that. We'll get Steve on the show. I mean, and
I'm counting on you to do that.
Let me tell you, if Steve comes on the show, we're going to need a lot more food.
Yeah.
And he's a big dude, man. But certainly, very impressive, Congressman, and it certainly makes us proud. Obviously, and that's why I was really excited to have you on the show. Certainly, it shows the lineage, and it shows the connection between labor and politics. And so, let's talk about working people, and let's talk about an issue that's really important to you: raising wages for hardworking families. Let's talk about the Fair Wage Act of 2016 that you introduced.
Sure. Just what you were talking about is understanding what unemployment's like. You've been in the building trades, you know what it's like to be. I've been on disability. I was a single dad trying to, make it through an apprenticeship program, daycare, all these things that we live, I take with me to Washington. And I still carry my ticket, which is my union card in my wallet, which reminds me where I am every day. So when we come up to something called the minimum wage, in this country, the federal minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. It has been a decade since Congress voted on a raise. A decade. How disgraceful is that? Nobody really is surprised that you can't live on $7.25 an hour. The surprise is how close you don't even come to making it.
Sure.
So what happens? You fall back on government.
That's right.
for food stamps, all the things that we understand, because those corporations are shifting it back to the government so that they don't have to pay it. So we very simply say, let's make predictability. Over the course of the next 7 years, we're going to raise the minimum wage for $15 an hour. $15 an hour, and guess where all that money gets spent? Right here in your backyard, in the community. You know, when the corporations are making money, it's getting sent overseas, and we never see it. Raise the wage for people who haven't had a raise in a decade.
And you're not talking about doing it overnight. You're talking about over time.
7 years.
And there's also...
Which almost even makes in 7 years, by the time you get to 15, 7 years from now, if that's the scale, it's obsolete. 15 is obsolete, right?
Well, and you've had 10 years of a free run.
But
right?
let's also talk about the pro-business element that you put in there. So in other words, this isn't you weren't insensitive to businesses when you did this. You have I think it was a part of the bill that helps businesses. It goes with the economy, correct?
Right. And what very simply happens is everybody's, you take it $15 an hour, the sky's going to fall. There have been 3 times in history minimum wage which has gone higher than what we're proposing in terms of a percentage. So very simply, we say for the next 7 years, you know ahead of time that the pizza shop across the street is going to have to pay the same thing, that next year it's going to go up $1.
Right.
$40 a week. If you work full time, $40 a week.
And you're talking laying it out over 7 years. I mean, come on. Well, let's talk about, people talk about.
I can't even.
Joe, you know how many people are on welfare right now that have to work 40 hours?
I can't get past, Congressman, the thought of justifying opposing that.
Well, this is what happens. That's why you don't see it on the floor for a vote, because if it hits the floor, it will be voted on. And that's what we're trying to say. If you want to raise the debt limit, great. How about raising the floor? It's called the minimum wage. So if you want to give those tax breaks to the billionaires and millionaires, give a break to the people who are just trying to live. You follow the rules. You do what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to be able to live in this country. Nobody thinks you're going to do it for $7.25 an hour.
And how much would that save us in welfare? I mean, in public welfare, where people have to work for a living and they're still on government assistance. I mean, raising the minimum wage not only gives people more expendable income, but it also saves us, in the welfare lines.
The dignity. People want to work.
Come on, absolutely.
So that's when you're hearing they want to have more of the visas to allow them to come here and work in the summer. Well, of course they do, because they can pay them less, because they got them over the barrel. The moment somebody is here on a visa for a summer working here and they do something wrong, they get tossed. So there's a lot of problems, but the simplest solution to help our economy, if you raise it to $15 an hour over 7 years, 40 million Americans will get a raise. 40 million Americans. And it levels the playing field across the...
Does it have to be 7 years?
If I had my way, we would do it much quicker. But we do have to be in some ways sensitive. But I say that under the guise that for the last 8 years, they haven't had to pay anything. 8 years without a raise.
Incredible.
Pretty remarkable.
Billy, you deal with workers all the time. Head of the Newspaper Guild of Greater Philadelphia. You deal with it. You listen. You talk. You cajole. You're in that and live that life on a daily basis. Whether it's the Newspaper Guild, whether it's Uber, you're in that conversation all the time.
Correct. We see it. Especially, we see a major pay gender gap that we've been working on for a number of years now, and trying to close the gap for women to make the same money that their male counterparts make. So if you're here 20 years. And your male coworkers here 20 years, why shouldn't you be making the same salary? And that's something that we've been
72 cents on the dollar.
Well, and that's one of the things that the congressman is also involved in, talking about income inequality, and that's a big issue.
It's Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor on Talk Radio 1210 WPHT, presented by Weinerman Pain and Wellness, serious doctors for serious injuries, powered by Pond, Lahaki, Stern, and Giordano, the workers' compensation firm. We'll take our second break of the big show. We'll continue our conversation with Congressman Donald Norcross when we come back.
Radio.com. Radio.com.
We as Congress and the President have to come together to create a pathway for citizenship for those who play by the rules. those children who have come here through no fault of their own are left in a status of, quite frankly, they don't know now. So they'll be hiding in the shadows. I don't think that's any way to treat any Americans or those who want to be Americans. All of us here are not more than 2 generations away from being those immigrants. So I think this is important. You know, our diversity is, quite frankly, our strength.
Congressman Donald Norcross joining us here on Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor on Talk Radio 1210 WPHT. Shout out to everyone around the Delaware Valley listening in tonight for our kickoff of the fall of 2017 as Hurricane Irma shifts its focus and starts to bear in on Florida. We continue to watch from afar and then get prepared and be prepared to help any way that we can.
Well, and certainly as we look at that, our hearts go out to the first responders and certainly those who put the uniform on. And I just want to take a moment and ask for your thoughts and your prayers for electronics technician Ken Smith, who was one of the young sailors who was killed in the accident on the USS McCain, who lived and graduated from Cherry Hill High Schools right across the river. A horrible tragedy, and we held a hearing on some of the problems that are going on, but 10 people on his ship were killed when that collision took place. And that was just 2 months after the Fitzgerald had a collision and 7 more sailors. So to Ken's family, our hearts go out for the loss, and keep him in your prayers. His service is coming up this next Saturday, and we'll all be focused on it then, but we need to be focused every day of our lives.
Absolutely. And Congressman, you had said before we started the show was one of the most difficult things you've had to do since you've become a congressman, to contact his family. It must have been just unimaginable.
But how proud his father was of him. In fact, his dad served, and then when his son served, Dad actually rejoined the reserves. So he and his son had that special bond, and one we have with the U.S. to put the uniform on. Less than 1% of all Americans ever do that. So a tragedy. We have to give them the right tools so they get the job done.
Absolutely. It's unimaginable to think that happened. Thoughts and prayers to his family, and thanking him and his father for their service. And one of the things I wanted to touch base on was your commitment to the military. Congressman, you know, as a father of a veteran supporting men and women in uniform, it's important to you to support our men and women in the service and our veterans. So to talk a little bit about the Veterans Freedom of Healthcare Act that you introduced.
Right. Well, I sit on the Armed Services Committee, and I've had the honor of going around the world and visiting our troops. I was 4 times in Afghanistan. But the one thing that I've recognized is that we have the greatest healthcare system in the world. But unfortunately, that's not the same for our military. We have a system that is parallel and unequal, and quite frankly is broken. So we very simply want to say, give the veteran a choice. If he wants to go to the Veterans Hospital and he wants to wait in line, they're very happy once they get there. The problem is trying to get that care. But by the same token, if you just, sprained your ankle, you might want to go around the corner to your neighborhood hospital, whether it's Virtua, Cooper, Kennedy on our side. Why should you have to wait? So very simply, our act says, give the veteran a choice. If he wants to go down the military side of the equation, you go to the veterans. If not, you have the choice to go to any of the hospitals. So we're trying to have that discussion, and there's a couple pilot programs taking place. But overall, we need to give our military the very best the U.S. has to offer.
And I'll tell you, with the issues we've had with the VA, one of the most disturbing things is, you have the big commercials, serving the Air Force, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and then when they come out, the healthcare system for them is a mess. So obviously, your commitment to that is important, and certainly, something that we're passionate about on this program, Krausey.
As you said, Congressman, I guess less than 1% serve in the United States military. And when you put that in real perspective, and for me, I just went through it with my son, who after 3 years in college called me up out of the blue and let me know that he joined the National Guard, joined the Virginia
Wonderful.
National Guard, and went through the whole experience. I just went down to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and went through his graduation, and it is it's undescribable to be able to. It's an undescribable feeling that I can't explain to somebody who doesn't know, other than to say it's just unbelievably special.
Yeah. When my son got out of boot camp, I just was filled with pride to watch what he did. And then when I visit Iraq and Afghanistan and see him out on the front lines, it just shows what a commitment they have to our country. And then to visit Arlington Cemetery, to where those have been put to rest, particularly in the past war, and just the grief that goes with it.
And unfortunately, in my family, my wife's uncle passed away on the week he was coming home. He was in the Navy, and it was a story, and I didn't know him. He was Vietnam, so emotional. The commitment that these individuals are making. That's why when I see the Army Navy game, it's so much more than a football game, man. And you know when they sing at the end, and the pride you have, but also knowing that these guys aren't preparing for the NFL most of the time. They're preparing for Iraq, and so obviously our commitment and our appreciation to all of our armed forces, and certainly we appreciate your commitment to them, Congressman. Before we move on, and I know it's amazing that the show is flown, I want to talk to you real quickly about what you just introduced, the 529 Options Act to make apprenticeships more affordable.
So right now, the way that the 529 programs is, parents, typically when a child is born shortly after, are able to defer on taxes a savings account that would go to the child's education when they grow up. And it had always been focused on college. Now, obviously, we now understand that not every kid wants to or needs to go to college. Myself, I went through an apprenticeship program. But you couldn't use the 529 savings account for an apprenticeship program or the costs associated with this. So very simply, it just says, in addition to college, you can also spend this money for apprenticeship programs and the cost associated with them. You know, I think that's common sense.
Sure.
And sounds easy enough, right?
And by the way, as I have 3 children, 2 of them went to college, and certainly they're carrying that debt. My older son is an electrician who has 0 debt, sure, has a house, and is moving on.
Sure.
Has a great career. It's about training for the career, not for the degree.
Absolutely. And we've had shows on the apprenticeships. And by the way, you know, we talked to the sheet metal workers, the apprentice coordinators, and this goes for, you know, most of the building trades unions, apprenticeships, talking about the investment that they make without government money into their own members is what it would cost to send somebody to Harvard. And so, and not everybody, like you said, wants to go to college or is acclimated to college. Going into the trades is an incredible opportunity. And so, absolutely, 100%.
But in America, we not always look at those who go to college and those who work with their hands as the same.
Sure.
The dignity of working with your hands, I am so proud to be an electrician.
Sure.
Who went from construction site to Congress. And I think everybody should be. And quite frankly, they do it in Europe. They're not quite doing that in America. Those who are blue collar are the very fabric of our country, and we should be just as proud of them, whether you're working as an electrician, an iron worker, or if you're a doctor or a lawyer. We're all doing the same thing.
Well said. And the transition just makes so much sense. Thank you so much, Congressman Donald Norcross, for being our guest. Just an honor and a pleasure to have you in the studio.
Great to be here.
Let me get you to comment just real quickly on, with everything happening in the world today, I'm curious as to if you're prepared to start the day every day, not knowing what is going to pop up in front of you. It's got to be a challenge. Got to be tough.
What a great question. I mean, you wake up and you hear what North Korea has just launched a missile. Is an ICBM? Is it have a nuclear warhead on it? Gee, you wake up and there's a storm coming down. Are we going to work together? You know, it's so exciting. It's such an honor. You know, never in my wildest dreams did I think when I was working in a manhole down at the refinery that somehow I would be representing the 1st District in Washington. And that's what makes it exciting. Some people say, is it frustrating? Frustrating means you're kind of giving up. I find it a challenge. You know, yeah, we have many challenges in front of it. It's my job to figure a way around it so we get further down the road so people have jobs, have an education, and we're safe and secure.
Well done, well said. U.S. Congressman Donald Norcross joining us here on Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor on Talk Radio 1210 WPHT. We'll take our final break of the big show. When we come back, Harry Giordano of the Variety Club will join us. We'll do a segment with Harry. We'll continue our conversation with Bill Ross, who's in the studio tonight. And he didn't bring the cannolis.
Original news stories, podcasts, columns from your favorite hosts, and more. Interact 24/7 at Facebook.com/1210WPHT.
I've been coming out of step with them guys, okay? And I was a treasure of the Democratic Party. You know, I've been a loyal Democrat my whole life. But I've told people, and it hasn't, like I told you, it just didn't resonate with this election. If you look at the last few years, I've been telling people we have to become a little bit more individual. We have to be more of our own brand. We have to do a better job at becoming a business.
Back here live on Saturday Night Live on Talk Radio 1210 WPHT. Special thanks to Congressman Donald Norcross for coming in to the studio tonight, spending some good quality time with us. Don't forget, coming up at 8 o'clock at the top of the hour, 8 to 11, Dan Loney takes you into the night, 855-839-1210. Call Dan Loney and tell him why we should vote against giving aid. Why 90 members of Congress voted against giving aid. I don't quite get it, and I don't understand, and don't have the time to talk about it. But I just don't understand it. But a special thanks to Congressman Donald Norcross for being a part of the live show.
Awesome segment.
On Talk Radio 1210 WPHT, presented by Weinerman Pain and Wellness, serious doctors for serious injuries, empowered by Pond, Lehocky, Stern, and Giordano. And J-Doc, I take a moment tonight. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but I do want to at least reference tonight our partnership for the big show with the Sonesta Hotel of Philadelphia.
Absolutely.
More details to come, but the Sonesta Hotel, we're excited to welcome them into the partnership, and it's going to be fantastic.
Our best of labor hotel and event space, the Sonesta Hotel in Philadelphia. Unbelievable. Real excited about that partnership.
And a lot of plans for the fall on this big show as we move into the fall of 2017 here on Talk Radio 1210 WPHT. Go ahead, J-Dog.
So one thing I would like to say about Congressman Norcross, he's a member of the House Armed Services Committee. And he also he was appointed to the Strategic Forces Committee, which oversees our nation's nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles defense and national security space program. So, I mean, that's a big dog we're talking to right there. And Bill, I'll tell you what, just couldn't have a better representative.
What's nice with the congressman, and you saw it in person, he never forgot where he came from.
Oh my God!
And he just does so much for his constituents and the people in New Jersey and his district. And he's just a really good guy.
And the thing is, you can see he wears his Union heritage on his sleeve, man. I mean, and certainly proud that he's the first Union official to go to Congress. I heard there may be a second one. Bill Ross might be running, huh?
It might be time. I will announce it on this show.
Well, I can tell you this: me and Krausey got your back, no matter what else happens.
I know I mentioned going into the break, Harry Giordano of the Variety Club. We hope to have Harry onto the program, but on the chance that we don't get him in here before we run out of time, I did want to reference the honorees for the Golden Heart of Variety Award reception presented by the Tri-State Labor and Management Council. A couple of good honorees on the list. One being Sal Patty, of course, of PNC Bank. Big shout out to Sal, who's not only been in this studio for Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor, but he brought the Sal Patty Vino. He brought the Sal Patty wine, which was excellent.
And he brought great food also.
And he did bring good food.
Yeah, so I mean, Sal's one of our great friends and a very well-deserving honoree from the Variety Club. Also, Chuck Urkel, who was a partner of Claire Harrison, and of course, a great friend of ours, especially in the AFL Council, Ted Kirsch, Vice President of the American Federation of Teachers. He's got the Education Leadership Award. We're extremely proud of his award, and really congratulations to all the honorees. And by the way, Variety Club, I mean, come on, Bill. Unbelievable, organization.
They do good work. We have always supported them from our local, the Newspaper Guild, and Stu Bykowski, one of our members, always did a comedy show every year to help handicapped, I think, children was the event. It's always well attended.
Let's take a moment to ask Bill Ross before we run out of time here on the big show. If you're like me and you go to Philly.com on a daily basis, if you go 4 or 5, maybe 10, maybe 15 times, and you go to Philly.com, you're paying 99 cents a month right now to get it. What's the feedback, Bill?
So far, so good.
Yeah, I think
we're
so,
hearing,
right?
Yeah, we're hearing some positive results. Members or readers are hitting the 10 limit, the 10 story limit pretty quickly. We're hearing, and I think they've converted a lot of.
Well, I think it's
a lot of
interesting,
readers.
and what's interesting about it is that's where I get my news, Philly.com. Okay, and let me tell you. So anybody who says they're not going to pay after 2 or 3, you're talking about $1. I can tell you this:
$1 a month.
$1 a month.
$1 a month.
You know, I had that. I really didn't because I knew it was coming. But I'm saying it took me about 30 seconds to say, what am I going to do here? I'm going to keep going there, clicking on headlines, and I can't get anything. I mean, no, it's absolutely worth it. We have the best writers in the world. They have the best union rep in the world right here, and so yeah, it's a bargain. And by the way, if we want quality news, and quality writing, we're gonna have to, we're gonna have to pay for it. And by the way, 99 cents? Are you kidding me? It's just that people got to get used to it. But if we all before the internet existed, we all bought the Daily News and the Inquirer, right? So a lot of people aren't doing that. They get the news online. It's just that makes economic sense.
Especially in today's times, these reporters are putting their lives on the line, and they're out covering these storms and everything else that's going on.
Well, those guys, the guys that are flying from the light posts, Bill, you got to get some some kind of rules that's not anything over 85 miles an hour.
That's it.
They have to stand in the middle of a storm.
And that's going to bring our big show to a close here on Saturday night, or on Talk Radio 1210, WPHT. It's Saturday Night Live, our kickoff for the fall of 2017, and we start it in a big bad way with the Henry James Saloon in Roxborough. Wow, did they deliver, and a special thanks to everybody there, J-Doc.
Oh, yeah.
I'd love to do one of these shows live at Henry James. That's how great.
They also have frosty beverages, if I might say so myself.
So pretty good
Thank
stuff.
you, J-Doc.
Eight different ones on tap. Special thanks to Bill Ross of the Newspaper Guild for joining us, and of course U.S. Congressman Donald Norcross for coming into the studio and being a part of the big show. That's going to do it for J-Doc, for Ryan Boyer, for Bill Ross, who was with us tonight. For Matt behind the glass, nice job, Matty, for getting it done. I'm Joe Kraus. See you next time.
I seen that open space. I hope you're saving that for medical marijuana, because I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of that, and I just want to let you know, we're talking big numbers. We're talking, as you know, they're talking trillions, but we're talking mucho billions around here of unionized pension money. I haven't heard in 6 weeks one conversation about Russia yet. That's the reality. They come to me about jobs. They come to me a little bit about Obamacare, but they don't come to me about Russia. And with Philadelphia jumping out of the seams as a hospitality town, we need our transportation to be clean, efficient, safe, and on time.
This program is a paid commercial announcement and in no way represents the views of WPHT or its management.